Okay. So the next two recipes that we're going to do, one is going to be a pasta fagioli or pasta and beans, which is a really common dish in Italian households. And I like it because it's another great way to use canned beans. You could easily make it with dried beans, but we just have a mixture of beans. We've got some kidney beans, we've got some black eyed peas, and we've got some pinto beans in here. So whatever you want. I don't know. Have you ever made it with anything
I've made it with
else?
anything.
Yeah.
It's whatever beans you have.
Yeah. So we have that. Again, we opened up a can, we rinsed it, and we're able to reduce the salt by 41%. If this had been, say, a regular can of beans, you can easily get salt-free or reduced salt beans as well. I pre-cooked some pasta, so I just used some fun multicolored bow tie pasta, also called farfalle, so which means either butterfly or bow tie in Italian. So that's kind of fun. And then we've got some onions, we've got some carrots, we've got some herbs, some garlic, and some canned tomatoes. So I wanted to just go through what ingredients we had because I was letting my pan heat up. And so again, like we talk about in class, it's really, really important to let your pan heat up before you add something into it. One, that's going to prevent sticking, but it's also going to help things cook a lot quicker. So we're going to do about, I don't know, tablespoon, 2 teaspoons to a tablespoon of oil. And again, like we've talked about in class, we like to swirl it around, and you can tell when it's done, the oil is heated, when it starts to sort of like ripple. It almost gets like shiny in a way.
It shimmery oil.
Yeah, like shimmery. And then the other reason why we would heat up our pan too is I find I use less oil because the oil gets very fluid and it really spreads around the pan a lot more easily. So we're going to take some onions. And again, like we talked about in class, you want it to sound like you just turned on your shower. That's sort of the sound that you're looking for, and you know that your pan is hot. So we're going to start with some onions, and then we're going to start with some carrots as well. So we got a larger carrot. What was the carrot that we got today?
They're sold a lot of times as Nantes carrots, Nantes, Nantes carrots, and they're quite interesting because they're a very large carrot, but they remain tender and sweet.
Oh yeah.
A lot of times when you let carrots get too big, they get quite tough and woody, and this isn't the case with these Nantes carrots. It's really a delight.
Yeah, no, when I was cutting this up, I mean, it was like I could have used a butter knife. Obviously I didn't, but it was kind of like that. So then, like cooking at home, we're going to season with some salt and pepper as we go along. So I just had a little bit of salt. Can you crack in some pepper?
Yeah. I really love these pepper grinders that they're starting to market pepper in for two reasons. One is you get a really nice coarse grind with them. But the other is that you can unscrew them and refill them. So that really makes a big difference to me. I have one at home that I've filled with a really dynamic mix of peppers. I've left out black peppercorns and used green, pink, white, and Szechuan peppercorns.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a really nice mix.
If you ever get the chance to try Szechuan peppercorns, they're totally unique because they provide almost like an effervescent, sort of like tingling spice on your tongue. I really, really like Szechuan style cuisine because of that pepper. And so I don't know if you can hear this, but we can hear it. It got really quiet. And that's because we have cooked out some of the water from these vegetables, and it sort of brought down the temperature in the pan. And so when you add food to a pan that you've heated up, it's automatically going to drop the temperature. So you can turn up your heat a hair, but you don't want to go too high because, food can burn, and you definitely want to avoid that. One thing I didn't add in at the beginning was garlic because I find that garlic can burn sometimes if you add it in the beginning. But again, it's everyone's personal preference. I'm adding it in now along with red chili flakes. So this is sort of the second way that we're getting heat in today's dishes, we use the fresh bird's eye chilies, which we know we've had 3, we've had 1, we've had 2. They're pretty spicy. This dried chili flake, it's just a little bit more traditional. In the south of Italy, they have like calabrese peppers, which are really, really spicy. But there's a lot of influence from North Africa in southern Italian cuisine. And that's where you'll tend to find more spicier dishes in the south. In the north, you'll tend to find more buttery style dishes that are a little bit heavier. So, just like in Canada, we have cuisines that span north, south, east, west. The same thing is true in Italy. So this is looking pretty good. I think what we're going to do is we can add in our tomatoes. So this is just a whole can of crushed tomatoes. And we're going to bring this up to a simmer. And it really just stopped. There's no sound coming from this because it just sort of is cold at this point.
And as ever, we used our no salt added tomatoes because tomatoes are one of the really high sodium canned vegetables. So I always look for no salt added. These ones are Blue Label, but they come from a variety of brand names.
Absolutely. So we've got some herbs that we're going to add in here and let warm up with the rest of our ingredients. So we've got some dried basil, we've got some dried oregano, and then we've got some dried rosemary. You could also, if you didn't have individual dried herbs, just get some Italian seasoning. It's totally fine. But one thing that I like to do is whenever I do herbs, I like to put it in my hand, and I like to give my hand a nice herb massage. That's what I kind of think of it. And what that does is that helps break down the dried herbs, but it also helps bring out some of their essential oils that are left. One thing that is common with dried herbs is their intensity decreases as they sit in your cupboard. So I think the biggest culprit is pumpkin pie spice. If you only use pumpkin pie spice once a year, and that's, around, say, Thanksgiving or Christmas to make pumpkin pie, well, then you might need some new pumpkin pie spice. And the same is true for the other herbs and spices as well. Do you want to just add in the beans? I think we can just.
Why not?
I think we can just add in the beans at this point. But we're not going to add the pasta in. So we pre-cooked some pasta. We're not going to add that in just yet. We're going to add that in at the very end. And you could be cooking your pasta right now while this is heating up. But we just decided to cook the pasta ahead of time. One major thing to always remember when cooking pasta is always save some pasta water in case your dish gets too cold or too dry. This will help bring it back up to life. And it's got a little bit of starch that the pasta had, and it'll give some nice mouthfeel. And they call this sort of liquid gold in Italy, which I think it is. So before we move on to our other dish, we're going to make an uru dal dish. I'll just tell you about the last few ingredients we're going to add into our pasta fagioli. Is parsley, which I cut up, and then some Parmigiano Reggiano, so some Parmesan cheese, which is proprietary. It's a protected term, so not every cheese that's Parmesan can be Parmigiano Reggiano.
One of the things about this dish is you probably noticed we have beans in it, we have tomato in it, and we have pasta in it. And the reason that we present this dish is because beans and tomatoes and pasta are very common food bank distribution items. So you'll often go to the food bank and get some dried or canned pasta. You'll get some canned tomato product. It might be tomato sauce, it might be canned tomatoes, it might be tomato soup, and then they'll give you some pasta. And so it's really important to have dishes like these in your back pocket, so when you're talking to people about foods they can make because they're getting their food from the food bank, this is a really great dish that you can talk to them about. They might not be able to get the Parmesan cheese, although something I'll often suggest is they just go to the bulk section of the supermarket and actually get just a couple tablespoons of the grated Parmesan from the bulk section in the supermarket. Similarly, they could get the Italian spices from the bulk section in the supermarket.
So while this is just going to be simmering away, another thing which we harp on in class all the time about is making sure that everything is cut in a similar size. So we have these sort of in a small dice, which is about the size of the tomato, it's about the size of the bean, and that's going to help everything cook together. This is looking a little dry, and so I'm going to add some of the pasta water, and that's going to help sort of make things a little bit more viscous, and it's going to add a little bit of flavor, and then it's going to give something for the pasta to sit into. Because pasta fagioli, it's one of those things where, again, everyone's grandma makes it different. Some is a little bit more wet, some is a little bit more dry. And today, I don't know, we're really cooking here. So we're just going to see how ours is going to turn out today. It's going to be delicious, but it may be different today than it is yesterday. So, yeah.
If you're talking to food bank participants, food bank users, one of the key things that you always need to keep in mind is that food banks are not a solution to food insecurity. Now, in our Canvas section, there's some information from Dietitians of Canada, the executive summary of Dietitians of Canada position paper on food insecurity. And it makes a really key point that we cannot expect people to solve food insecurity using food. Food insecurity is an income issue, and so we must use income-based measures to solve food insecurity. So it always comes back to money and housing, because those are the things that put money in people's pockets. And so it's great to have these back pocket food bank recipes, but also to keep in mind that people cannot meet their needs using the food bank.
Just a note for safety as we talk about making this dish. Notice how I turned the handle towards the inside, and so it gives Jerry and I a lot more safety when we're back here, which is really important to always remember in the kitchen as well. So the next dish that we're gonna sort of finish up really is an urul dal, and so this is some dal. Urul dal is the type of dal. Dal is like a lentil. And we cooked it for, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and it really just broke down into kind of a nice puree. And what we're going to do is we're going to add some flavor. We're going to add seasoning to it at this point. So in this little cast iron skillet right here, we're going to add in a little bit of oil, and I've been preheating this. We're going to add a little bit of oil. And this is where we get calories. So, urul dal comes from Southeast Asia, and sometimes individuals may not eat a lot of animal proteins, which can typically be higher in saturated fat. But what they're also higher in is calories. The fat provides calories. And so cooking with some oil, adding some oil to this dish is going to help provide people with calories. So we're going to let that heat up, and then we're going to add in a couple other items. We're going to add in some seeds. Now, these are whole seeds. So are these black mustard seeds?
Yeah.
And then we're going to add in some whole, these aren't caraway seeds. Cumin seeds. So they smell delicious. But we're going to let this heat up, and then we're going to add them in. And then we're going to add in this asafoetida. So last year, the asafoetida smelled like feet. and
strong feet.
When you go online, they put it a little bit more gently. They will say that it smells like rotting garlic. Now that might not sound appealing, but what I think it smells like the garden. I think it smells like earth, and it's got a yellow tinge to it. As I stir it up more, I'm starting to see.
It's
starting to smell. But so our pan is hot. We're just going to add our seeds in, and you can see automatically that they start to sizzle and they start to pop.
Don't use that one. That's not a silicone one.
No, that's not a silicone one. And then we're going to add in our asafoetida, which doesn't necessarily need to be a whole lot, like a little bit goes a long way. So we're going to use a pinch. So we're just going to use a pinch like that. And that's really going to provide a lot of flavor. Thank you.
There we go.
So these have changed color. They've gotten a little bit more caramel. Now we're going to add in our chilies, which when you add chilies to something like this, watch out because it's going to be smoky. It's going to provide a lot of like spice that is perfumed. So watch out.
Aerosolized capsaicin.
That's right, which is basically pepper spray. We are cooking with pepper spray today. And then we're going to add in some other aromatics. So we've got some garlic and some onion.
When
And
we're cooking the
that's it.
seeds this way, we're doing exactly what we talked about in 340 class, which is roasting seeds to increase the aromatics and flavor that we get from them. And so this is oil roasting. You could also do dry roasting.
So these are really, I mean, this is hot. It's smelling quite nicely. And we're just going to literally cook that for just a couple minutes.
Did you put the hing in? The asafoetida?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I put it in. Yeah. And then we can just season this with a little bit of salt as well. And then we'll taste it at the end. So I think now we can put in our pasta into the pasta fagioli. So we'll just add this in. Again, this is pre-cooked. I coated the individual noodles with a little bit of oil after I cooked them, just so they didn't stick. And they're going to absorb a little bit of this moisture. I think we can add in a little bit more of the water. And just let that come to a simmer. And now these are done. So we're going to turn this off. And we're going to add this into our dal. Can you hand me one of those towels?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Because this is hot. So we're going to add this in. And it's just really perfumed. It's really fragrant right now. And then we're just going to stir this in until it's completely mixed. And this is something that you can make ahead. You can warm it up later and serve this with some nice bread. And we're just going to taste this real quick, see if we need a quick adjustment. I think it needs a hair of salt, but you can really taste that asafoetida and the herbs, the seeds.
Many
That's
people
great.
call asafoetida hing, H-I-N-G, hing, and it's widely reputed to help reduce flatulence. We'll see.
We'll see. And I hope you see too. So the last thing we're going to do into this is, this is looking nice and liquidy, is we're going to add in our cheese. I don't know, we'll save a little bit of cheese to put on top, and then we're going to add in our herbs. This is just some parsley that I cut up. And again, just like Jerry said earlier, we could serve this dish in this sort of pan, this saute pan, which is nice. But I think what we're going to do is we're just going to put it in this bowl, just like this. And then this is something that is very, very family style oriented. Make sure we're maintaining safety. And then we'll just top it with the rest of our herbs, which is very attractive, and then the rest of our Parmesan. And that's it.
Looks delicious.
Okay.